It's nice to speak with you today, Ashutosh. And today we're looking forward to hearing your views on global sourcing perspectives from a corporate supply chain. Can you first provide a brief background of yourself?
Hi. Hey, Dustin, it is great to be talking to you. Thank you for this opportunity, and looks like we're going to have a great conversation. As background, I am a supply chain professional with roughly 2 decades of experience in industry and consulting. On the industry side, my experience has been with an automotive OEM, a global bank, a large industrial manufacturer, and with a 3PL where I had, regional North American P&L responsibility. In addition, I've had consulting experience with the #1 global management consulting firm, where I led their supply chain practice, as a junior partner. Now I work at.
What is your experience with global sourcing?
My experience with global sourcing, most of my career has been in broad operations with a strong emphasis in sourcing. I've had experience with, direct sourcing, so commodities, parts, goods, and with almost all categories of indirect sourcing, for example, travel, fleet, temp labor, IT, facilities, telecom, shared services, and the likes. I've had roughly 15 plus years of logistics sourcing and operations experience. When I talk about that, it's related to transportation, warehousing, and in general, supply chain or logistics IT. And I've had this experience across industries and globally. As part of consulting, I've led multiple procurement transformations, focusing on overall spend overhauls to resetting procurement organizations for medium and large.
Can you talk about some of the best practices that you can share?
Um, yeah, it's a great question on best practices. This is not really a silver bullet, and the practices will vary from company to company. Based on my experience in working across industries as a shipper, as a 3PL, and as a management consultant, globally, I will share some practices that I believe are key that many companies are or should be adopting right now. Some of these practices, may lean slightly towards logistics, but the applications are just as good for all global direct or indirect sourcing categories. Although, as you may know, each category does have its own nuances. So, starting with the first practice, I would call it, know what you buy. Sounds really simple, but many companies struggle to get their arms around what is being bought, where, by whom, and at what price. Accuracy of having this, spend baseline is very important. Spend visibility is paramount to good sourcing outcomes. Number 2 is spend analytics, is time well spent. Companies don't spend sufficient time here. It's very important to analyze where the money was spent. Did we buy what we needed? What was the demand fragmentation? How many SKUs are we buying? If I give the example of transport, how many lanes, what are the requirements of what we are buying? Do we have the right level of spend information for, ocean, air, for truckload, parcel? Do we know what the supply fragmentation looks like? So how fragmented is our supply base really? And again, in some cases, fragmentation may be good, so it's not always a bad thing. But it's important to understand what fragmentation is today, how fragmented are our suppliers, and and why we should or should not have that level of fragmentation. And most importantly, with spend analytics, it's focusing on the 80/20, right? What are the key or top areas that will move the needle? Focus there, not having an analysis paralysis situation. Point number 3 is, category strategy and sourcing strategy are fundamental. We need to understand the dynamics of the category we are sourcing. What drives the supply? What drives or moves the market? Who are the key players, that is the suppliers? Are they regional? Are they global? What capacity exists in the market by player? Right? How do these players operate? How does the market operate? What are the influences of demand, and how does our company work with regards to that? In short, we need to assess the market, the players, the market forces, and the economics, which, all of which should lead to a strong, well-defined category strategy. But then we can't stop at that. You got to define what the sourcing strategy is going to be. So it is about how do you go to market for RFPs? What is the frequency or the contracting cycle? In general, sometimes we see companies fix the cycle and then keep, hitting the repeat button all the time. Each category needs to have a different sourcing frequency, right? Even within a category, frequency will need to be adjusted, and you can't have one answer for the lifetime of that category. For example, in transportation, if you believe the market is heading towards an inflation, a longer contracting cycle, maybe a 2 years contract might be the right, solution. If you're suspecting or if you're expecting a deflation, then you might go with a smaller length of contract, as small as you can, right? Now again, we should be not naive enough to think that the suppliers are not aware of the market. So it's always going to be a negotiation on whether or not, a 6-month contract is something that the suppliers are willing to sign. But again, that should be the goal, is to sign as short of a contract as possible, especially if you're foreseeing a deflation. Point number 4 is stay true to your supply base. Bring suppliers along. Always be truthful. You don't need to play games. I mean, we've seen cases where we try to fool around or fool the suppliers, and it's in nobody's interest. Short terms, we may see gains, but in the long term, it's not sustainable. It's not a healthy relationship. More importantly, we gotta collaborate with the suppliers. So ask what we can do to help them become more efficient, and really work on this. So don't just do it for the namesake, right? Now that really leads to the next one, which is, 5th point, focusing on the TCO, not only on the price or the rate. A rate is only about 50 to 60% of the total cost of the product or service. There are several other things, that are as or more important sometimes than the rate alone. What is the capacity commitment we're getting for it? What's the flex capacity? What about, delivery, commitments, on-time delivery, JIT deliveries and pickups? Will it help simplify the processing for us? Will our other systems become more efficient because of something that a supplier is willing to bring? Will our systems be better, right? Will they be more integrated, and therefore we'll save less time, or we'll save time, in other, collateral activities which are taking, bringing inefficiency. So there are many things that matter. The key here is don't just look at the tip of the iceberg, look way below. Point number 6 is, set targets in advance. Companies use, for example, rules of thumb all the time. For example, some say, we'll try to get a 3% reduction, or we are just trying to be inflation neutral, right? That is really not the way to go. It's important that we stay aspirational, but but that we are realistic. Do we really put should cost models to use for target setting, and if not, why? What is stopping us, and how can we get there? Point number 7 is negotiate hard but fairly. Arm yourself with facts and data. It is not sufficient to just ask for a 5% lower price than what the supplier has quoted you. Know why you should deserve 5%. Why not 8.5%? Know your facts well. Arm yourself with the facts. Stand your line, but be reasonable. Point number 8, use technology. Lots of advances in procurement, right? And many in logistics procurement tools. For example, we have e-procurement, e-RFX, etc. Tools like this should be integrated within the base systems, the spend management systems that you have within the company. Invest the time to link e-procurement tools to, say, in transportation, the TMS, the transportation management system. It will only help make data gathering, data analysis easier. But not only that, it will make the sourcing process so much more efficient. The sourcing award outcomes could also be integrated back to the TMS for improved management of all contracts carriers, right? You could link it to an automated route guide compliance model. So the possibilities of using and deploying technologies are just endless right now. We would be really Stone Age if we don't really accept technology and start using it to the best of our abilities for sourcing. And finally, this one point, invest in building talent. Sourcing is a truly global function, and globalization has made it that much more challenging, right? We need to build capabilities and skills in all levels of the sourcing organization, right? It can't just be you just getting people from somewhere and not investing in training and building the skill set, right? And skill set is not just how do you go and negotiate a contract and how do you run an RFP. It is understand the category.
And do you have any suggestions on things that should not be done, such as lessons learned?
I think by and large we covered that as part of the best practices. What best practices you to follow is basically, if you follow that, then you are trying to avoid the lessons learned. But there are, let's say, 3 or 4 that I'd like to highlight here. Number 1 is stakeholder alignment is key. Never leave them behind. Make them an integral part of the sourcing process. Educate them on, or negotiate with them in the right way in de-speccing their needs or business requirements, and ensure they're fully aligned on what they really need versus what is a pure want. Nothing. You don't always need a gold-plated, screw to fix a picture frame. So what do we really need, and then go and source what is absolutely needed versus what people, would just like to have. So don't fall prey to just, the ask, investigate further, go deep and, dig deep there. The next one is, manage expectations on target. Don't overcome it, but don't stand back for the next year either. Get all that you can now, don't leave money on the table. It does not help us. It does not help companies. It is not good for, long-term stakeholder value creation, and it's not the right thing to do for the employers that we work for. The next one is, see through the entire process. Procurement should not only stop at contracting. There's a big portion around compliance and performance management, so metrics, KPIs, having the right performance dialogues with the suppliers. Procurement should lead, not just be engaged in with such dialogues throughout the entire length of the contract. And lastly, one lesson learned is, you know, in an attempt to go after maximum value now, we tend to not consider risks that are out there. Risks are everywhere. We need to protect ourselves and the business. Now, we cannot always predict how the market is moving accurately, right? Or how the demand will shape, or if there will be a catastrophe. Now, as supply chain, we have to plan for these risks. We have to factor these risks in. So it's important to kind of assess the what ifs, what are important, and then build some sort of a premium for those types of risks in the contracts. So your supply chains keep running the way it's intended to be. Um, okay, thank you, Dustin. It was a pleasure talking to you, and hope the listeners and the readers get some information out of this. And yeah, that's it. Have a good and a successful year ahead. Thanks. Bye.